Over the past 2 years, ever since I reviewed the F650GS and the G650GS Sertao, my audience has been asking for the review of the XChallenge, a motorcycle in BMW's lineup that I think is at the apex for adventure touring, hard enduro riding. Unfortunately, only built for 3 years, was more or less a sales flop, but in my opinion, still the best motorcycle in the 650 thumper adventure touring range in the used market. Now here's everything you need to know about this motorcycle. There's incredibly little information online. You're probably not gonna see one on the road, and if you do, it's a very rare event. So here's everything you need to know about this incredible motorcycle no longer in production. Zdravo y dobrodošli, bon dia, bem-vindos, servus und willkommen, buenos dias, bienvenidos, greetings riders, and welcome to another Pegasus Motorcycle Tours and Consulting review. For you today, I have my very special, very own BMW XChallenge 650X. So it's the official denomination G650 XChallenge. It's one of 3 motorcycles that were produced in this very special line of 650 thumpers from 2006 to 2009. More or less all 3 were not sold very well, so more or less a sales flop in industry terms, so they were discontinued, unfortunately, because I think this remains one of my favorite motorcycles in this class, even more so than the G650 Sertao, the special edition that came after the Dakar. I think it was a sales flop, we'll talk about why, but I think mostly because when they were selling these motorcycles, they were still selling the G650GS, or the F650GS at that time, so they were kind of competing against each other. So now I'm talking about 3 different models for this X range, the G650X range, the XChallenge, the XCountry, and the XMoto, which is a supermoto version of. The XCountry is kind of like a scrambler with a 19 front, so it's a little different, although the suspension remains the same. A lot of things remain the same between the 3 motorcycles. I'll tell you about the differences, but all 3 very rare, very hard to find. I'm specifically going to be reviewing the XChallenge. I really think it's unfortunate that this bike is no longer on the market, because this hit the perfect balance of weight, power, and off-road as well as highway capability that I think adventure tourers are really grateful for. Unfortunately, bikes have become bigger, more expensive, more complex, complicated, and all of that is, in the modern age, I think it's a little overwhelming. So it's good to have a simple bike, proven engine, Rotax 650 thumper that really can do it all. You know, almost 11 inches of travel, dry sump, ABS that's switchable, etc. So stay tuned for a complete in-depth review of this underappreciated, not very well known motorcycle. Again, my favorite in the whole class. All right, so 2006 to 2009 is the production range of this bike, only produced in this aura white color paint scheme. I like the bike because, again, it balances perfectly the highway performance with off-road capabilities that's necessary for those really exciting adventures when you're ADV touring. There's some specific benefits to this bike that BMW really thought through, and I appreciate that. Some stuff is very different. For example, it does share the famous Rotax engine. I've spoken about this engine so much, so if you'd like more details, please look at the G650 and the F650 reviews, because I go in more detail. But it's a very famous Austrian engine, very dependable, very reliable, simple to work on, with long maintenance intervals, about 6,000 miles. It's a dual overhead cam, 4 valves in the cylinder, so it's a very efficient motor, pushing about 54 horsepower at 44 foot-pounds of torque. I believe that torque is delivered at 5 to 50 RPM, as opposed to 7,000 for the peak horsepower. Top speed, just over 100 miles an hour in 0 to 60, or standing quarter mile, let's say, in 14 seconds. So pretty quick motorcycle overall. So it's an incredible, powerful motorcycle, all sitting at 345 pounds. That's curb weight, wet weight, with all the liquids. So it's incredible. I mean, you get 55 horsepower at 350 pounds almost. It's just an astounding amount of power for a very light motorcycle that's also incredibly powerful and capable on dirt. So you get 10.8 inches of travel, and it's mimicked both front and rear, and a similar amount of ground clearance, and you get a motorcycle that really can absorb anything that the road throws at you, especially with the lighter weight. You know, as we were mentioning, you could see what the market is doing. It's really pushing towards bigger bikes. You know, even the GS line has done away with the 650, went over to a 700, 800, and then 1250 now. So 750, 850, 1250, and it's unfortunate because you lose some of that capacity to ride really difficult dirt when you find yourself in some difficult situation. Weight is key. You're not going to worry about having 100 horsepower underneath you. You're not going to use that. So having a motorcycle that you can lift up on those very difficult inclines that you fail to climb, or just a motorcycle that you can maneuver in very difficult single tracks that you find yourself inadvertently in, just because you're kind of curious what that road looks like, it's very beneficial. So an amazing little detail, as you can see, this bike has been crashed. So I had a client out this past weekend, and he was interested in my KTM 690 Enduro R 2017 model. Very relatable to this motorcycle, two apex predators in the 650 ADV thumper line, and experienced rider in every sense of the word, mature rider, serious rider, rides a Goldwing and a VFR 1200 sport bike, and not new to the game. But he ended up taking this bike. My suggestion was try the BMW first. It's way more tamer than the KTM. It's way more manageable. I'll speak to that if you're actually interested in how they compare. I did a comparison between the two because, again, I think these are the top of the line that you can get. One is newer, one is older, but they really perform beautifully. And I don't think the KTM is a machine that's conducive to learning how to ride off-road to begin with, so not the 690 Enduro R in any case. So I said, let's take both of them out. I'll show you some roads around the area. You can try both bikes, but start on this one. And sure enough, he did like this one more, but he ended up crashing on a very serious corner up in Palomar Mountain, which is our favorite here locally. And turns out the corner has a name, kind of interesting, but the camber is off on it. It's just a terrible corner. Sergey is the one who bought the bike. How do you like it so far? What do you think of the BMW?
Very good one.
Yeah?
Yes. And thanks to Nick, I'm hoping to explore more with this bike.
Yeah, we're doing some I mean, that's deep. And you're going faster than I thought you would, for real. But this is where we're at. There goes the bikes. Go ahead. I'll see you on the other side. Wow. He took out 3 posts holding the guardrail. Took us 30 minutes to get him and the motorcycle free. I thought I just witnessed the worst thing happen to a biker. Turns out he wasn't hurt. Bloody shins, cut boot. We actually had to cut the bottom just to get him out. But the motorcycle took it like a champ. We bent the handlebars back and we finished the day. He wanted to finish the day, and so we did. So it's pretty incredible. I thought it was a done deal with this bike. It looked all bent and twisted, but not even the plastics cracked. And we'll talk about the plastics because that's kind of an interesting aspect. Polypropylene material which bends and doesn't crack and doesn't shatter. And sure enough, you know, the bike was stuck under the guardrail. We couldn't pull it out the same way. We had to push it the other way so that we can get it out back on the road. And I was amazed that this bike could make it home. Obviously, a few things here bent, but yeah, just pounded back in place and rode it home. Pretty incredible. So the bike is very robust, very simple. You can work and work on it and fix it on the road, and that's kind of the point for adventure touring motorcycles that you plan to take on long distance trips. But because it does share that 650 Rotax engine, parts are available, and it's not difficult to keep this bike on the road for the long term. Now, another benefit is they all came with the, well, in the US they all came with the ABS. Not all, I should say, it was an option, but if you bought the one with the ABS, you also had the BMW 12 volt outlet, but the ABS is switchable. Push of a button, switches that off. It's a dual channel ABS, 4th generation ABS in that GS line, so very, very well refined, doesn't grab too early. I really like it. The brakes themselves, I think 300 millimeter in the front with a 270 in the rear, I believe. And for the Cross Challenge, it has 2 pistons in the front, 1 in the rear. For the Cross Moto, the XMoto, it actually has 4 in the front and a bigger wheel, bigger rotor for the brakes. So that's one way they differ, aside from, of course, the size of the wheels. Here you get the 21 front inch and the 18 rear, 90-90-21, with really heavy duty spokes. Again, I can basically provide a testament to the strength of these wheels in the fact that they broke three 8x8 inch wooden posts that hold the guardrail. I mean, it's just incredible. One was cracked in half, the other one was cracked in half and rotated, and the third one was in the bushes. So he nailed that so hard with the front wheel, I would assume, that it just broke that tree stump, 3 of them in half. So it's incredible. So and they run true. They didn't need any repair. Pretty incredible. So we'll talk more about the wheels shortly. What I did want to say is, one handicap of these motorcycles now, being that it's 2022, is that the cush drives are fairly difficult to locate, because the producer of those cush drives for this particular motorcycle is no longer active. So you kind of have to, there was an aftermarket provider from Australia. If you find them on eBay, definitely snatch them, because the cush drives for this bike are increasingly more difficult to find. Other than that, yeah, it's the axles actually are drilled through to provide that benefit in reducing weight. And again, the weight of the motorcycle, I think, is crucial. Let's not underestimate 345 pounds, pushing 55 horsepower and 44 foot-pounds of torque. So but it's very manageable, and that's one of the main differences between this bike and the KTMs, is that the delivery is very tame, is very easy to predict, and it's very manageable. So it's a regular cable throttle, unlike ride-by-wire, which I kind of dislike because it's too sensitive in my opinion. But this, you actually have to, put a decent amount of pressure on it, and you get those 55 ponies, 54 ponies in a very, very manageable and predictable way, which I always appreciate for bikes like this. Now, you're not going to have any issues with passing traffic, fighting the wind when the bike is loaded, etc. But you're also not going to be looping the motorcycle if you're climbing a hill and you hit that throttle, or you sneeze on the KTM and you twitch your hand, which is kind of getting annoying. But if you'd like more in comparison, please look at that video. So you'll get a 5-speed transmission, and this is a dry sump lubrication system. The dry sump is beneficial in that it lowers the center of gravity by allowing the engine to be dropped lower. There's no sump, there's no fuel or oil located collecting underneath the engine. There's no oil pan, because it's run by 2 pumps through basically the engine itself by pumps. It's not being sloshed around. There's many benefits of a dry sump system. It's more conducive to high output, high powered performance equipment, such as the Red Bull, for example, airplanes and the Red Bull Air Race. They use the dry sump system in their engines because whenever they're doing these incredible maneuvers, it doesn't suck the system out of oil even momentarily. Oil's being pumped through it all the time. It's not being sloshed around. There's also power loss that's attributable to the sloshing around of the oil. Not only that, but it provides the ability to have more oil in the system, which also aids in cooling the motorcycle. There's more oil, so it's more oil running through the system. Many benefits. If you're interested, Aprilia uses this system in most of their vehicles. So check out my review of the Aprilia Futura, where I talk more in detail about the dry sump system. So I love the engine. I love the Rotax engine. Of course, it was used in other motorcycles as well. The Huskies used them for a while. Aprilia uses them for a while as well. Pegasus, I believe, used this engine. So Pegasus was Aprilia's version of the ADV touring bike, although it came with 2 carbs for a single cylinder. Kind of annoying. I'm not a fan of carbs. This, of course, is electronically fuel injected. You don't need to deal with any of that. And I just appreciate EFI. I've never had issues with EFI. I don't know anybody who's had issues with EFI. So I prefer my bikes to be EFI at this point. Everything save for my custom chopper slash bagger, the American Eagle, which is no longer in production. So I like to have something that's easy to work on if I need it. It's not really easy, but it's easier to diagnose if it goes bad. This is different. This is already proven system by BMW, so I prefer the EFI. So you get the dry sump, 5-speed transmission. This particular model is geared a little lower, favorable to adventure touring conditions, as opposed to the Cross Moto, for example. So it's got a 46 sprocket in the rear with the 15 combination, as opposed to the 47 for the cross country and the Cross Moto. That's another way they differ, and you kind of do appreciate that. I've never stalled this motorcycle in difficult, challenging sections of dirt, so I appreciate the gearing. I'm a fan of the gearing ratio. Chain driven, like all BMWs, the chain is on the right side here. I don't know how you feel about that, but I prefer the chain on the other side because I can pull the bike on the side stand, because it doesn't have a center stand. I don't need a center stand. You pull it on the side stand and you're rotating the wheel with your foot and spraying the chain. That's what I prefer to do instead of this system where I have to kind of reach underneath, and not a fan of it. But you know, BMW tends to do things a little differently. This bike is not immune to the craziness that BMW sometimes employs. I speak about that when I review my BMW K1200S, where they put the blinker, each blinker on each side, which is kind of annoying when you're riding a 160 horsepower machine into a corner, or you're lane splitting, giving blinker. You also have to worry about, you know, throttle, brake, and blinker. It's a little unnecessary. You know, blinker on the left hand, that works. That's been working for a long time now. Now you can see this kind of unattractive piece here. That's the gas tank. The gas tank has been located underneath the seat to keep the center of gravity low. I really appreciate it. And more though, I appreciate the fact that you can fill it from the side. Unlike my KTM 690 Enduro R, where you have to access it from behind the seat. Here you can actually access it from the side, so you don't have to remove any luggage. It's very smart design. It fits about 2.5, I believe, gallons of fuel, somewhere around 9-10 liters, if I'm correct, of fuel, and 0.5 gallons is in the reserve. Consumption is at about 45 miles to the gallon. That equals to about 5.2 liters per 100. I've never had issues with running out of fuel, but you get about 150, 155 range. All depends how you ride. Gets around 45 miles a gallon the way that I ride it. So 150 should be kind of your top aim. The seat itself, I love the seat. It's wide, it's hard, and it's comfortable. You don't need the soft seat. I'm in pain after I get off my KTM. This is the stock seat. Never had a need to change it. I actually have a thicker stock seat as well. They provided both options, and underneath the stock seat you get a pump, a hand pump. You can use it for the tires, but ultimately you can use it for the very unique suspension of the rear of this motorcycle, which is the BMW air suspension system. So instead of a traditional shock and spring, you have basically an air-powered, air-filled pocket. It has two different compartments, and it works more or less like a hydraulic regular system, except it uses air instead of liquid. There's certain benefits to that. Some people love it, some people hate it. I don't mind it, although it does change with the ambient temperature, so you kind of have to keep adding pressure to it. Pressure is added just by a simple valve, regular valve, and that's why that pump is useful. And I usually keep it around 100 for my weight, 100 psi. But I've noticed that in different conditions, especially if it's been sitting or it's been in colder climates, obviously that's going to change because air compresses when it's colder, expands when it's hotter. But because of that fact that air expands when it's hotter, when it warms up through use, of course, it acts kind of like a progressive shock system. So the hotter it gets, the more load applied to the vehicle in the rear, then the pressure increases, so it's more damping. Basically, that's kind of the idea behind this. It was the same system that was used, I think exactly the same, that was used in the famous HP2. HP2 is basically a 1200 boxer engine enduro, hyper enduro motorcycle developed by these insane engineers. BMW locked in a room and gave them a bunch of money and said, make something incredible, and that's what they made. You probably have never seen one in person. They're very difficult to find. Even to this day, they sell upwards of 15K. So same year, more or less 2009, around there. Look it up, BMW HP2. They also made the sport and the scrambler version, the street version, but I'm talking about the enduro. Pretty incredible motorcycle. Keep an eye out for that review. If you like the bigger displacements, because that's also in the 300-pound range, so pretty incredible bike for a 1200 displacement. So yeah, the air suspension, again, love it or hate it. A lot of people changed to Öhlins standard shock and spring system. I don't mind it, but it does feel very floaty in the very beginning until it picks up some temperature and it starts damping a little more. So I don't mind the system. It's fairly simple to adjust just by adding more air, but if you have the little portable tire pressure unit, then it might be a little annoying, because of course the 12-volt outlet that BMW provides is their outlet, so it's not the standard 12-volt car outlet. So I've added a pigtail here so that I can connect not only my tender but also my compressor, my little portable compressor. You get LED tail lights, which is really nice. They look great, and obviously they don't consume a lot and they last a long time, so I like that a lot. And you'll notice a little keyhole here. What that does is allows you to remove this whole rear end with the key. Just drop it, and if you're going to use this motorcycle in more aggressive dirt track days, right, you don't need any of this. So that's kind of an interesting concept, right, that you can remove this. This toolkit here is not OEM, and but I've installed it here to keep some of the main tools that I needed that we actually used when we crashed. So pretty useful. I would highly recommend it. And I have a Touratech rear rack here with the Touratech tail bag, a little small tail bag, expandable. That was one problem with the bike. There wasn't too many producers of aftermarket parts and accessories, such as a luggage rack and engine protection, etc. I think SW did it, and Touratech produced it, along with producing a stronger, I believe it was steel, basically, subframe. So one main complaint of owners for this motorcycle is that the rear subframe, which is bolted, was weak, or too weak to put luggage and a passenger, etc. That on stress loading the thing, it could break or it could bend. So Touratech was at some points, is what I'm reading, not anymore, you can't find it on the website, but they were producing a subframe that was bolt-on, easy enough, plug and play type of deal, but much stronger. I'm also told that BMW was aware of this problem, basically, so that in the last year, 2009, the yellow colored cross-country models had that stronger steel frame, so that if you have that issue, you should find the yellow, swap the frames. That's what I've been reading from the owners group, but I cannot myself confirm either way, because I don't have any experience. I don't ride with the rider, and I do pack it down, but it's always pretty manageable. So it does look a little skinny, a little too skinny for my taste, but you know, I really can't say how weak or how strong it is, other than it's done what it's needed to do. And again, we've crashed this motorcycle pretty damn hard, where I thought, just looking at it under that guardrail, that it was a done deal, and nothing. I mean, even these aluminum alloy foot pegs, they bent and cracked, but they're still bendable and usable, and I really appreciate that. The lever on the left side is also pivoting on the little spring, so that survived. It needed to be bent back, but it survived. It wasn't snapped in half, so that's kind of nice. The handlebars hit pretty damn hard, and again, they bent here at this extender, but at the bar risers, basically, but I just took the wheel between my legs and bent the thing back. It was a little too easy to bend back, I gotta say, and we rode out of there. Pretty incredible experience overall. So that's so much about the frame. And I was mentioning how the plastic took the biggest hit, but the plastic did not crack or anything. I mean, there's a big dent on the other side, and it protected the basically the radiator and the overflow tank and whatnot, and the fan, and it really warped quite a lot, but it didn't break because of that polypropylene material that it's made from. So it's pretty incredible motorcycle. I gotta say, out of all the bikes that I've owned in the 650 class, which is now all of them, this remains my favorite bike, just in virtue, especially after the crash, in virtue of durability and usefulness of this thing. So, all right, so you do get an aluminum skid plate out the box, and I like that a lot, as opposed to my KTM, which comes with a plastic one that's really difficult to install if you ever had to, take it off to work on the bike, and or more difficult in any case. So I like this. You don't really need an upgrade. It looks like a 2mm thick aluminum, so it's pretty robust in that regard. So we've spoken about the aluminum frame, the subframe, the swing arm. That's actually exceptionally strong and very stable, very not prone to any kind of flexing. So you do get a lot of response from the bike and what it's doing, and I appreciate that a lot. The 45mm front suspension, inverted forks and shocks. These are covered obviously because of the dirt and whatnot, but inverted forks allow you to have a much stronger setup up front as well. There's less flexing. That's why normally you would see a brace support here for regular standard shocks and forks on other motorcycles. I speak about it when I review my KLR, for example. It's a very necessary upgrade because there's just so much give. You don't feel any of that here. Again, 10.8, I believe, inches of travel, and it just takes it in stride. There's nothing, no obstacle, no stump, no rock, no ditch that this bike has been subject to that was too much for it. It really absorbs everything in a beautiful way. Just floats over things like nobody's business. I like that a lot. You get this very aggressive triangular fender up front, and what that does is it gives it more lateral support, so it doesn't vibrate as much, and in any case the handlebars are mounted on rubber as well, so that the vibration is not felt throughout for the rider. So I appreciate that very much. But 650 thumpers have a tendency to vibrate, especially the front, and this is rock solid here. The only thing what I noticed is not well designed, I would argue, that would probably just need just a zip tie, is that the speedometer cable is kind of hanging out there, so it can easily catch on anything. But the brake cable is out of the way, and the brakes supplied with this motorcycle, of course, are steel braided, so you get that exceptional feel, and you can work it with one finger. I really like it a lot. What else to talk about? In the speedometer, you'll get everything you need, nothing you don't. Digital speedometer, trip meter is easily adjustable and visible. There are 3 of them, and again you get the ABS shut off to turn off the ABS, although that's on your left thumb where the blinker and the horn are. Aside from the speedo, that's basically what you get. You get also a voltmeter for your battery, and that's it. So pretty basic speedometer in that regard, but it's easy to see. You don't need to search for anything. The information is there. It's hidden behind this plastic asymmetrical, what you would call it, I guess, platform that I have drilled holes through so that I can add a standard GS from the GS line windshield. So you can add a windscreen to this bike that's fitted on the other GS models of adventure touring motorcycles. The handlebars are tapered. They're sufficiently thick to take the brunt of they're inch wide, but they taper towards the outside, and they're super strong. I mean, like I said, crashed this bike, it was completely twisted, but the bike took it like a champ. So on it, I actually have an accessory GPS mount as well, along with ram mounts and ram mount mirrors as well. The clutch is cable operated. It was another thing that broke. I guess the male end of the clutch adjuster here broke. We had to cut that off, take out the broken piece, shorten it, and then adjust the clutch down at the clutch itself, so that I wasn't constantly on or grabbing basically. But it works, and I really like that a lot. Another little fact with the suspension here, it separates the compression from the rebound. So the compression is in the left fork, the rebound is in the right, so you can really fine-tune this thing pretty damn well to anybody's liking, and I appreciate that very much. The angle of rotation capable of the front wheel is 40 degrees, which allows you to really take those slow turn maneuvers without putting your foot down. I appreciate that as well. So really, overall, an incredible motorcycle. I do wish that they kind of routed these well, it's a Speedo and the brake lines in a different way, where they're not so much in your face. But again, I guess a little windscreen would hide them a little more. And again, that's where I like to keep my first aid kit, so that it's available at a moment's notice, you know. But I really wouldn't improve much about the motorcycle. I like it a lot, and the main problem was the aftermarket parts and accessories. I'm specific with my luggage. You don't really get too many options for luggage carriers. Everything is going to be expensive because nobody makes anything for this bike anymore. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I've had no issues with the bike. Again, very familiar with the Rotex engine. The battery's here. The oil is on the other side. So it's very easy to maintain and to keep on the road. And again, once you get in dirt where this bike likes to play, you realize that you are on a machine that you could really grow with and improve as an ADV rider. Leaves nothing to be desired when it comes to power, because again, for that power to weight ratio, this thing really takes the cake. The handguards provided, there were 3 different options in size, and they really perform beautifully to protect the hand and the levers in that crash. You could see the flexible clear blinkers here broke, but they still work and they're easily poppable back in place. The speedometer bracket broke as well in the crash, but it's all usable. Pretty impressive. Here you see the front light offset, asymmetrical, and you can adjust the angle pretty easily. That depends if you are carrying any weights that, you know, makes the bike sit in a different way. Here is the scratched, broken, or beaten but not broken front fender, and you can see it's pretty strong. It doesn't really bend too much. We have Heidenau's K60s, really great tires all around, and the rim just took the beating like nobody's business. The axle, as I was mentioning, drilled through for weight savings, and nothing's hanging low here like on the Honda XR650L, so you get high clearance as well here if you're passing through rocks and ruts, etc. Inverted forks protected by this plastic piece that's OEM, but also by the sock that I've added, and you can see how beefy these forks are. The radiator is protected by the plastic piece, also OEM, and doesn't hinder, of course, any kind of airflow, air movement. And you see the ground clearance aided by this aluminum skid plate. On this side, the brakes, ABS mounted brakes with the 2-piston Brembo caliper. Really do a great job, but I don't like how this hangs out. The Speedo cable hangs out a lot, and you could see how hard this motorcycle hit, and it was indented here, but it just took it like a champ. Just took it like a champ. Even these aluminum pieces are epoxy protected for the look and for the protection aspect of it. You can see here that the clutch adjuster here has been broken, snapped in half. This bolt is quite long. It's the whole length of this little 8mm adjuster screw. But yeah, it's unfortunate that broke, but it's been kind of holding on. This is an aftermarket foot peg that was bent in the process, and you could see how bent and broken right there. I had to pound it back in place. The OEM foot peg has been, but it's still usable, not flexing at all. And then here you see the BMW 12-volt outlet and the air dampening system. BMW's famous system used in the HP2 as well, and you just unscrew this little cap and fill the system to your liking or to your requirements. What I don't like, this cap, which is aluminum, beefy, fell in here once. Very easy to fall and very difficult to get out. So I wish it was tethered. That's something I would actually do. Maybe, I don't know how, but tether it somehow so it doesn't fall in there again, because that was very, very annoying. This here is an adjustment bolt that opens up basically a bypass valve, and the damper then is enabled to be preset so that you can basically adjust the damper characteristics to 2 stages. One is for more comfortable regular riding, regular roads basically, and the other for more off-road type of characteristic. So it's kind of a smart system, but again, a fairly different feel. Acts more like a progression shock, although you do know you're riding something other than a standard metal system. And that's actually one of the benefits. It's weight saving, there's less components in there, so it's simpler in that regard. The seat, very comfortable, because it's very wide, but not too soft. You can see it's actually quite an intelligent seat. This is the other side of the gas tank that's fairly low underneath the rider. Seat height is 36.6 inches, manageable in any case, especially when the air suspension is cold and the bike kind of dips down. The second lower seat drops the seat height from 36.6 inches to 35.8, or about 910 millimeters from 930. The exhaust is very large, the muffler, and fairly heavy. I actually have 2 of them, and it's not loud at all, which is something I appreciate, because I don't like the bike to be screaming at me all day. But you might not. There has been aftermarket upgrades, I guess, available if you're into that. Here you see the air suspension system right there. Basically, you've seen it on trucks before. Kind of neat design. The rear brake, 2-channel ABS. Very, very good system overall. I would not change a thing about it. This whole tail section, you can tell right there, the LED brake light. This whole tail section can be removed just with the key, and this whole thing comes off. And here you see my little toolkit and my Touratech top case, if you can call it that, and a Touratech rack. So let's take a look at the subframe. I don't like that bend right there. I don't like that bend. It's kind of calling for I mean, it's obviously supported, but I just don't like bends in metals like that where the weight is going to sit, especially if you load it down or if you have a passenger. So be a small passenger to fit there next to you, but it can be done. But you could tell it does have some protection here as well from the boot and the master cylinder for the rear brake as well, and the passenger foot pegs can be easily removed if that's something you wish to do. I prefer to keep them on, because you never know when you need to find a rider out there that needs help. So 46 tooth sprocket in the rear for the Cross Challenge, 47 for the other 2 models. And there you see the swing arm, very beefy. The chain is easy to adjust on this side. Again, I prefer it on the other side for maintenance purposes. I've noticed this bolt was loose after the crash, and for me to remove the bolt that holds on to the foot peg, I actually had to remove this bolt entirely, because I couldn't remove that system because of the engine itself. So that's one little design issue, but not a big deal at all. And you see no sump or oil pan. Everything is held in the frame itself and around the motorcycle, typically for dry sump motorcycles. So pretty cool design overall. Oh, there's a little issue right there. You see, I believe there's an overflow. Overflow is getting hit by the slap of the chain, and it's actually eaten right through it. So the overflow now is falling on the chain, which isn't good because, of course, oil or gasoline is a solvent. So I'm not sure what the effect it would have on the O-ring of the chain, but I'm sure it cleans the chain, which is not what it's supposed to be doing. I like to have the oil on the chain. So there you go. Pretty great design of this motorcycle overall. Here you see the polypropylene fairing hiding the fan and protecting the fan from further damage in that very serious crash. I've reviewed the crash and spoke about the crash, and you could see the details of that crash in a separate video. So if you're interested, take a look at that video in my playlist. So overall, really an astounding motorcycle that leaves little to be desired. I am curious about the HP2, of course, and I will definitely review that motorcycle. Thank you for watching. I hope this review was helpful and informative. If you'd like to see how it compares to other bikes in this class, I've reviewed nearly every one of them, and I'm especially eager to compare it to the KTM 690 Enduro R, because I think they are direct competitors, even though that bike is much newer and more aggressive. I think this bike really is still my favorite just because the power delivery is so much more manageable and tame. Thank you for watching. Nick, Pegasus Motorcycle Tours and Consulting. Stay safe, and till the next one. I'm out.